At the doctor's office, dentist, veterinarian, or even the hospital, you may have seen a pamphlet touting medical credit cards. But are they a good way to pay for your medical expenses, whether for you, your family, or your dog? Hi, I'm Jeff Hoyt, Editor-in-Chief of SeniorLiving.Org. Kaisa Janzen is the Assistant Director of the Helps nonprofit law firm, which helps low-income seniors and others who are struggling financially. In this video, the attorney will explain what are medical credit cards. Should you get one? Are they really no interest? Why it's better to have medical debt than medical credit card debt, and what you should do instead of applying for a medical credit card. Remember, if it sounds too good to be true. Hi, it's Jeff Hoyt, Editor-in-Chief of SeniorLiving.Org. And today, once again, I have the pleasure of speaking with Kaisa Janzen. Kaisa is an attorney, and she's the Assistant Director of the Helps nonprofit law firm, which helps people who are struggling with debt. Welcome, Kaisa.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Well, thanks for taking the time to set our viewers straight. So today I want to talk about medical debt and the use of medical credit cards. So how big a problem is medical debt in the United States?
Well, medical debt is a pretty common problem these days. It's usually, right around 100 million Americans at any given moment who are struggling with medical debt. That's a lot of us. That's a big percentage of Americans. And the amount of debt that those people, sometimes it's you, sometimes it's me, everyone takes their turn with medical debt, is a very large amount of money too. It's around 140 to 200 billion dollars. That's a lot of medical debt.
Right. And despite all the breakthroughs in health insurance and whatnot in this country, there's still millions of us having debt because they need emergency surgeries and whatnot. So what exactly are medical credit cards? Do they help with medical emergencies?
Medical credit cards are financed by banks. They are credit cards or banks essentially that have partnered with medical providers, veterinary providers, dental providers, to provide financing for services. If you have a medical credit card, you flip over the back, you're going to see a bank's name. They are still credit cards. They are just for medical services.
So isn't that a good thing to help people who couldn't pay for it any other way, to provide them with a credit card to pay for medical bills?
Getting medical care when you need it is a great thing. How you pay for it, though, can vary from terrible to wonderful. And these cards tend to be closer to terrible. There's no difference between a high interest credit card and a high interest medical credit card. Medical credit cards tend to be very high interest credit cards after the no interest introductory rate.
To a lot of consumers, no interest sounds like a dream come true.
Yeah, you see no interest and you think, oh, well, I'm just getting a loan for the thing I need and then I can pay back that money and then go on my merry way. But the no interest introductory rate is actually a deferred interest rate, which means that if you don't pay off the entire balance by the end of the introductory rate, all of the interest that would have been charged to you during the introductory rate comes back. It's added on to what you owe. And if you didn't have the money to pay for the service when you needed it, the odds of you suddenly having the money when that introductory rate is finished are pretty low. These introductory rates are usually around 6 months. If you have a medical credit card and finance a service for $5,000, you can't manage to pay off that balance in the introductory time period, you are going to be hit with all of the interest that accrued during those 6 months, plus whatever you have to pay going forward and the original balance. So those balances get higher and higher and higher. It's always a better option, if you have any other access to credit, to go that route. Medical cards, when you're in a moment of desperation, may seem like your only option, but in reality, it's always a great idea and really important to consider every other credit option available to you.
And some of these cards, I know the legal limit depends on what state you live in, but some of these cards can have more than 25% interest rates.
Yeah, a lot of states don't have usury laws really protecting you from interest rates that sound like they're out of an old scary novel from the Victorian era. Do not be confused. These cards can charge you really high interest. I mean, interest rates there seem like they should be from, the local loan shark or something like that. They are not really easy to overcome because your balance is going up, up, up. And so maybe you're making big payments, but bringing down that balance with a high interest rate gets progressively more and more difficult.
And using your example, if I had to borrow $5,000 on January 1st on one of these medical credit cards, if they said, hey, no interest for 6 months, if I manage to scrape and save and pay off $4,000 of it and 6 months go by, I still have $1,000 balance. After 6 months and a day, I owe all that interest on all $5,000 of it. If I haven't paid off the initial $5,000 and 6 months of it.
Yeah, if you don't pay the balance by the end of the introductory rate, you're paying the interest charge for financing that original $5,000 throughout the entire period, just like if you had the 26% interest rate when you started the whole process.
And I don't want to speak generally here, but I'm guessing if I'm in the doctor's office with a sick child or a veterinarian with a sick dog, I'm not sitting there talking to someone who's really going to go through the chapter and verse of how this is going to work. It's just going to be a lot of fine print and mumbo jumbo that I'm going to say yes to and not find out the ugly truth until much later.
That's true. You're in a vulnerable position. You are probably very, very focused on the well-being of yourself or your child or your beloved pet. You aren't really in the place where you can think analytically beyond just the big print no interest sign that's there in front of your face. Yeah.
Well, my guess is there's a little asterisk next to the no interest sign.
There's always going to be an asterisk.
So with these, problematic cards, have there been any issues with them if they're really as, bad as you say they are?
Yeah, they create a lot of issues. Let's talk about, your credit report and your credit score for one. When you get a medical credit card, it's typically for a specific service. That emergency root canal, your dog needs a catheter, your kid stuck something up your kid's nose. The situation where it's really important, but the medical credit card is just going to give you credit for the cost of the service, typically. So you pay for the service, you have it on a credit card, but guess what? Now you have a maxed out credit card. And for most of us, a maxed out balance will bring down your credit score. So not only have you got this nice new juicy credit card with a high interest rate, ultimately, you're going to have a harder time getting approved for a low interest credit card. So it's kind of a double whammy. The other thing to know that's really important, the law in many states treats medical debt differently than it treats consumer credit debt. Some states like Louisiana have specific code written into the laws protecting your homestead that exempt any sort of foreclosure action on a home if it's for medical debt. But a medical credit card is not a medical debt in the eyes of the law. So when you choose to get a medical credit card, it's not going to be treated the same way a medical debt would be treated in a lot of situations.
So to be clear, if I get a $10,000 bill from a local hospital that I can't pay, it's certainly not good, but they have no way to start adding on interest charges and financing and things like that. They'll try to negotiate with me and try to get that money, and it may not even show up on my credit report. But if I put that $10,000 on a medical credit card, it just shows up as unpaid debt, and I'm generating interest every month and then interest on top of interest, even if I don't use the card. There's minimum balances I have to make, or there'll be more fees added onto that. And that would show up on my credit report and hurt all my other chances of getting credit.
Yeah, the whole thing pretty much makes a dog pile on your debt to income ratio where it just becomes really hard to crawl out of it.
Right. Debt to income is one of the ways that your credit score is determined. So if these are really that I hate to use the word evil, but if they're really that bad, have banks gotten into trouble for issuing these?
Yeah, without going into great of detail, it's public record. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau actually has, spanked banks, say that 5 times fast, a few times for shenanigans associated, or what they said were shenanigans when it comes to these medical credit cards. Just recently, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau hit Wells Fargo with a really large fine. And one of the reasons for this fine was described by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau as having a problematic health advantage medical credit card. So yeah, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is aware of this issue. If it's on their radar, they're paying attention, then we should be paying attention too, because it could very much mean that there probably is an issue going on with these cards.
So if you were in the doctor's office, the hospital, the veterinarian with somebody who was tempted to use one of these medical credit cards because they're faced with a high medical bills, how would you counsel them?
With the understanding that a lot of these situations are high stress, emotionally impactful situations, my first suggestion would be to do the simplest and easiest thing possible, which is just reach into your wallet. If you can open your wallet and see credit cards, you're roughly familiar with their interest rates, and you have access to other credit, those might be your better options. Hopefully your wallet's there while you're at the doctor. That's going to be the easiest, most, in my opinion, probably the least emotionally impactful thing you can do in a quick step. Just look in your wallet. Do you have other credit cards? If so, you probably absolutely want to use those cards. As long as they have a decent interest rate, that's going to be your better bet. You can also see if your provider has payment options. Providers aren't always going to advertise that to you, but the truth is you're not in jail when you're at the dentist. You're not in jail at the veterinarian. If you have a procedure performed and you can't afford all of the cost, they cannot legally keep you in their office. You can make payments if you have to. It's honestly probably going to be your better option rather than getting stuck in this cycle of interest with a medical credit card. If you have access to any short-term credit from your bank, a lot of banks offer short-term credit options if you have a checking account, and those are truly no interest options. They aren't deferred. Unfortunately, those are typically really low credit level accounts. But if it's just, a short, quick $500 desperate sort of situation, that might also be an okay idea if you have options, if you have that option, excuse me. And again, I know that these are usually really, really high stress situations, but I also see medical credit cards offered quite a bit at providers where treatment is not emergent or discretionary for cosmetic procedures. And I understand also that cosmetic can be kind of a loosey-goosey thing when it comes to dental care. If you have your front teeth knocked out, you don't really enjoy that experience. But if you are in any sort of position to take a minute and think about it, it's a good idea to think about it before you go getting a medical credit card.
I would assume most major hospitals have a office set up of financial assistance, that at least they're worth finding and talking to them to see how they could help out, whether it can be put on a payment plan or even get some of the charges waived depending on your financial situation.
Oh, absolutely. If you're in the hospital, you are very likely going to have a lot of options. Laws in most states will require hospitals have those billing departments set up for you where you can call in and make payment arrangements. And like you said before, those are not going to have the insane interest rates and deferred interest after 6 months. Absolutely go that route if it's available. And most hospitals do have that available.
Well, good to know. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time. It seems like your advice is to avoid these things if you can, because they're going to come back and bite you when that no interest introductory period ends.
Yeah, be careful.
Thanks, Kaisa. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate your time.